Nolan was so secretive that the cast were locked in a room with the script. Like, they were locking this shit down so that they could not leak. There would be no spoilers. It's like, dude, nobody could spoil this movie if they tried. There's dozens of videos and articles and diagrams trying to explain what the hell happens in this movie. So what is the equivalent, like, oh, Vader is his father? Like, imagine walking by people standing in line to the theater and being like, hey, it turns out one of the 7 Robert Pattinsons is the guy who unpicks the lock. And they'd be like, huh? What? Oh, okay. So here is the plot. In the far future, 200 years, the Earth is so polluted, global warming, whatever, that the solution the future people come up with is to reverse the flow of time. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. It's probably easier to invent time travel than it is to clean up pollution. Makes about as much sense as sending the entire human race to a new solar system because you can't figure out how to grow okra.
Blight. Wheat, 7 years ago. Okra, this year. Now there's just corn.
And we're growing more than we ever have.
The world doesn't need
like the
more
potatoes
engineers.
in Ireland and the wheat in the Dust Bowl.
We didn't run out of planes and television sets.
Will die.
We ran out of food.
Soon.
So they invent time reversal, and what this doomsday device does is it makes the whole world experience time in reverse, which means the people alive at that time in the future would then be going through time backwards and like writing over the past like we're an old VHS tape of Night Court. Anyway, so it's the end of the world to us, but it lets them live on in an ever unglobal warming world, I think. Except, wouldn't all those future people be living alongside copies of their past selves?
Here we are, face to face, my future self and me.
Stop it.
So much alike, and yet so different.
No.
One of us messy, the other one clean. Getting along isn't always easy, sometimes we disagree.
Quit it.
But in the end, we know we're good for each other. 2 peas in a pod, future self and me. Future self and me.
So you're just like doubling the world population? I don't know what's going on. And if you change the past and kill your past self, you keep existing? We don't know. It doesn't matter. Who gives a shit?
He threatened to kill her in the past. If he does, what happens to her here?
It's unknowable. It's unknowable.
So anyway, the inventor who made this doomsday device that will reverse time and let the people in the future undo global warming and get to keep living, but it kills all of us, I guess.
Don't try to understand it.
He decides that would be genocide, and so he breaks the doomsday device, which looks like a crankshaft. Wink, wink. He breaks it into a bunch of pieces, and he sends them back in time. Because he can't just break them or destroy them, I guess. So he sends them through time. The bad guys in the future are communicating with our stereotypical Russian bad guy in the current present, but their past, to get him all of these pieces together so that he can assemble a doomsday device and then blow it up in a mine shaft nuclear test site thing. So it would be sealed in there, and in the far future, they would be able to like dig in there and find the doomsday device, and then they could end the world in the future. All right, that's okay. So the stakes are the whole world stops existing.
Understand it, we're trying to prevent World War III.
Nuclear holocaust.
No. Something worse.
Pretty big stakes. The protagonist and his friends run a series of heists in order to steal parts of the doomsday device, ultimately failing. And then they pull a heist in the past where they trick the bad guy into thinking his doomsday device is put together so he will seal it in the mine, sending the message to the future people that he did it, but he hasn't actually done it because they like heisted it at the last second. The bad guy is wearing a Fitbit, and if he dies, it sets off the explosion, seals the doomsday device in the mine, and the future bad guys can dig it up. And it also sends them the message, right?
It'll be linked to a switch. It'll be a simple email burst that reveals the location of the dead drop. Set the fire, it's how it stops.
His death activates the algorithm. He dies, the world ends. No one dares kill him.
That's right, a horribly convoluted, multiple heist plot involving crashing a plane, driving a car backwards, lots and lots of time travel, is all because they can't figure out how to disable this guy's Fitbit. Yeah, all they have to do is disable his Fitbit, and then murder him, and they're good. But they'd rather have like hundreds of soldiers travel back in time. Or they could just wait till he kills himself and seals the doomsday device in the mine, and then they have like 200 years to dig it up. I guess they just don't have the technology to dig in a hole. That's what we're gonna go with? They can go back in time, they can't dig a hole?
Well, we better put it out the hole before the bomb goes off, eh?
The protagonist, knowing the stakes are the end of the world, worse than World War III, he's told, decides multiple times to put the mission at stake because a tall white lady is in danger.
It can invert the entropy of the world.
If that happens.
Oh. End of play.
End of play. Can you be a little more precise?
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Everyone,
total
everything
protonic reversal.
That's
bad.
Okay. Enough?
All right, important safety
Including my
check. Thanks.
son. Including my son. Including my son.
It'll kill you. Only if I die. Yes. That's what killing you means.
Don't give it to him.
This isn't plutonium.
It's worse than that, goddammit! Don't give it to him. Don't give it to him.
Yeah, he jeopardizes the planet because he wants to bang this one particular white lady who's married to the evil Russian guy.
Tell me if you've slept with my wife yet.
No.
So there's a couple of times earlier in the movie when masked people show up with guns and they don't speak and they won't show their faces, and so you immediately are like, okay, so that's him in the future, or it's his friend in the future, right? And then they're like, no, look, he's fighting with him. And you're like, why would you fight the future of yourself? That wouldn't make sense. And then that's what happened. So even though he's going to deafen himself and nearly blow his own head off, he just like can't not do it.
Stop that.
Everybody come!
So having been through this once, now when he's going back, he can't like do it different. He has to bring the gun. He has to like almost blow his own head off and deafen himself. So basically the movie's saying you can't actually change the past, and yet they travel through time backwards to change the past, but they can only do the things that were already going to happen. Here's my question. Who decided to fire this gun? Because it's nobody. The gun it just has to fire for reasons, I guess. I'd figured it out on the first watch that this would be him from the future. Like, it's not that hard to figure out. It's a time travel movie. The dude's not showing his face. Like, okay. And then there's the thing with the lady, and she's like, sees a woman jump off the boat, and it looks like her. And then you're like, whoa, that was her? Yeah, it's a time travel movie. God, like, of course it is. So I guess the big spoiler is that Neil, played by Robert Pattinson, sacrifices himself to unpick a lock. Yes, with knowledge of the past, how all the things have played out through this mission, he uses time travel so he can strategically place his skull in the perfect place to fucking die. Cool. He does this on purpose. And Nolan acts like this is a mind-blowing spoiler, like Vader is Luke's dad or that Palpy fucks. So they can only use their knowledge of events to change the past by doing what has already happened. And since the world hasn't ended, that means future people haven't destroyed the world, which means that the good guys win, and we already know that at the beginning.
No, I thought of something else.
Great.
This reversing the flow of time. Doesn't us being here now mean it never happened?
In a parallel worlds theory, we can't know the relationship between consciousness and multiple realities.
It's unknowable.
Don't try to understand it.
So what's the deal with this temporal pincer movement? Like, it's set up as though you go through the mission forwards, and then you see how all the things develop, and you learn, like, oh, our enemy did this, and there's this trap, and so you send the same team back in time, and they go through the mission, and they can, like, undo those things.
Who are these guys? 3 years. Hours. How does Seder know about the ambush? He knew every move we made. Every one of them. Somebody talked. Who was it? Was it you?
Nobody talked. They're running a temporal pincer movement.
What?
Half his team moves forward through the event, he monitors them and then attacks at the end moving backwards. Knowing everything.
Like, the protagonist says the Russians knew all the steps they were going to do in this car chase sequence, as if they like, oh, we did our heist, but then they are using backwards time travel. They saw what we did, and now they're reacting to it and like undoing our cool heist stuff. Except if that were the case, why does Robert Pattinson, his great plan is to go back in time and get himself killed? Like that was the best he could do.
How the fuck does this time travel work?
Time Cop is a better movie. They're basically the same movie. Here, watch these.
You know what I think?
No, sir, I don't.
I think you got yourself a shipment of gold in that wagon that you're bringing to General Lay.
Money Plane has you covered. You want to bet on a dude fucking an alligator? Money Plane. Money Plane.
Every time an agent goes back, he risks making contact with a past version of himself. That could be a disaster.
And why is that, Senator?
The same matter can't occupy the same space at the same time.
Don't touch me. Same matter can't occupy the same space.
Number one rule, don't come into contact with your forward self. It's the whole point of these barriers and protective suits.
Oh, we don't have time.
Well, if your particles come into contact...
What?
Annihilation.
That would be bad, right?
Don't cross the streams. Why? It would be bad.
Annihilation.
That would be bad, right?
Keep him away from me.
Same matter can occupy same space. I'm still kicking. I must be on Broadway.
Whether it's the death of his wife, the death of his wife, the death of his wife.
This thing is gonna be bigger than our house by the time I'm done.
The death of his wife.
In both, you have a main character and like a work friend accomplice, and they know details about each other, and the other one's like, wait, how do you know that? And it's because of time travel fuckery.
Those files are supposed to be sealed. I don't even know why I'm doing this. You say you were my best friend?
For a long time.
I liked you?
Oh, yeah.
Vodka tonic and a Diet Coke. What? You never drink on the job.
You're well informed. Well, I prefer soda water.
No, you don't.
In Time Cop, you don't have to turn it up so loud that you wake up your neighbors just to hear Jean-Claude Van Damme's not very good one-liners.
Have a nice day. Oh, shit! Ooh, that's gonna hurt. Read it. Wolverine, between the lines. I should get the fuck out of here.
And at least the exposition doesn't come out of somebody like chewing the scenery.
Started without you. Hope you don't mind. I gather you have an interest in a certain Russian national.
Anglo-Russian.
But they don't seem to care.
The plot of Time Cop is just as complicated, but it doesn't obscure it from you intentionally. In Tenet, you don't even know about this MacGuffin crankshaft thing until an hour and 38 minutes in. Up until then, you just think he's chasing, like, stolen plutonium and trying to save a hot girl from her gold-digging decision to marry a Russian oil tycoon who shockingly turns out to be a dick. And you don't even learn the motivation of future people to, like, fuck the past over until 2 hours and 11 minutes in, when stereotypical bad guy is like, well, we, global warming them.
How could they want to kill us?
Because their oceans rose and their rivers ran dry. Don't you see? They have no choice but to turn back. We're responsible.
Also, Time Cop has rollerblading 90s villains with ponytails, goofy one-liners, terrible special effects that they're way too proud of. Jean-Claude Van Damme finds the Kenny G spot, and then you know his wife is going to get murdered in the next scene. It's great. He has a weird accent, and his wife even makes fun of his
Smart
English.
kid. He read my mind.
With your English, he doesn't have much choice.
Hey, I know all the good words.
But the character's name is Max Walker. Time Cop. Oh, hi, I didn't see you. This is Timeline A. Time travel was invented in 1994. Ron Silver, the bad guy. He is running for president. He's a senator in 94. He's running for president, and he is failing because he doesn't have any money. Bad guy. He goes back. Now, he's stealing Confederate gold. Some people are saying the stock market is profiting off of Black Friday. He's going to the past, and he creates Timeline B. The bad guy is now super rich, and he's going to be president. But then, Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is a time cop, he's noticing all this stuff in the past, catching him in the act. And so he's a problem. And because of that problem in Timeline B, he can't be president, right? Ron Silver, the bad guy, sends more bad guys back in time in order to kill Jean-Claude Van Damme. That way, he won't be a time cop, he won't be a problem, and then they'll make some money and he'll be president. Timeline C, in which they failed to kill Jean-Claude Van Damme, despite the fact that they can travel through time. They could have killed him as a baby or something. Terminator people. Instead, they try to kill him while he's a kickboxing cop. They fail. They kill his wife, blow up the house, and so this we call the dead wife, the Cliff Nolan timeline. And this is the timeline we start the movie in. The movie begins, we're in 94, there's an attack, they kill the wife, but fail to kill Jean-Claude, and then we travel along Timeline C. Jean-Claude Van Damme is going back in time, he's a time cop because they didn't kill him, they just killed his wife, which makes him work harder, I don't know, their plan is terrible. So he's interfering, there's a whole subplot with an internal affairs person who turns on him, whatever.
Everybody freeze! I'm a cop! I'm a cop! ID.
I don't even know. Ron Silver needs more money to be president, right? So he follows him back to 94 and discovers the big move that's going to make him president, going to make him all the money, is not to invest in Bitcoin or bet on the Super Bowl or invent the Macarena. Instead, what he does is he goes to his own 94 self, that's the bad guy Ron Silver. He finds his 1994 self, who is invested in a tech company, but then gets out of it, and then the tech company gets huge, and is then it's a company involved in time travel. So in the original timeline, he divested himself from this giant company that has time travel. He's an idiot, basically, right? Okay, so he goes back to 94, confronts himself, along with the, runner, the inventor, founder guy of the tech company, and is like, hey, old me, don't divest, stick with this company, and then you'll be really rich. Also, guy who's the founder, apparently you now have all this information about how I'm an asshole from the future, and I'm gonna this is just find yourself in the middle of the night and tell your younger self this. Why are you doing it with people around? Anyway, so he does that, which then creates Timeline B, in which he's now invested in the company, and he becomes president. Although we don't see it yet, the election's coming up, but he's up 28 points in the polls. Right, so Jean-Claude Van Damme in our movie, we are in Timeline C, and then he goes and he witnesses this, tries to stop it, fails to stop it, and so now he jumps to Timeline D, okay? So in this timeline, he's McComb, Senator McComb is the bad guy. Suddenly all their technology for time travel changes names, and now it's called McComb. And when he gets here, McComb is about to become president, he's about to win, and so he is shutting down the time cops, and now he's going to be able to change time at will. Jean-Claude then goes back again to 94, and this time goes to where they attacked him and killed his wife. He goes there, and so now at that attack in the middle of the night when the bad guys come to kill his wife and attack him, there are now two Jean-Claude Van Dammes. Oh my god. Instead of killing the wife, we create Timeline E, in which they blow up his house. This is an explosion. They blow up his house, but they fail to kill the wife. And this is where Blobman happens. So the house is blown up. Jean-Claude then, from blown up house, post blown up house, travels to the future, except instead of there, he comes here, which is Timeline F. And in this timeline, okay, so here, he kills 94 McComb and 2004 McComb, which means that McComb will never do any of this time travel stuff. And so even though his house blows up and then he travels to the future, when he gets there, his house is still intact, and none of this happened. And so you can say none of these timelines occurred because McComb doesn't exist after 94. So what's left is Timeline F, in which McComb vanishes in 94, and the house blowing up doesn't happen. So he has a son that he doesn't know, because he's worked with Timeline C1. So now there's a son he doesn't recognize. These effects are going to change things, and so he's going to be walking around being like, oh, how's Billy? And be like, who the fuck's Billy? Different kids. It's complicated, people. It's fucking complicated. What if he remarried and had other kids, and now to fix this timeline and save his pregnant wife means that in that timeline he doesn't meet his second wife, and so his kids in the other timeline cease to exist? That might actually present an interesting dilemma, right? Let's see if I can work that into my next screenplay. I'm working on a Back to the Future spin-off about Doc's dog Einstein. I call it Bark to the Future, Bitches in Time. And he just has sex with all like Cleopatra's dog and Abraham Lincoln's Yorkie. Many have defended the lack of character development by saying Tenet is like a James Bond movie. And James Bond doesn't have much character development while he travels across the globe from set piece to set piece. Which is fair, I guess. This film opens with a mass shooting hostage situation in a theater in Ukraine. So now you're sitting in a theater thinking about mass shootings in a theater, like how that one time in real life there was a movie theater for a Christopher Nolan movie and there was a mass shooting in the theater. Also, he modeled this after an actual massacre in a theater which happened not in Ukraine but in Moscow, where Russian special forces used gas to take back the theater and killed 200 innocent hostages with their poison gas. So we're really starting this movie off on a fun, exciting James Bond adventure. Okay, so to invert, you go in a spinning vault thingy, right? And the doors rotate, and then you walk out, and now you're going backwards in time, right? So that means that the instant you reverse time, you'd be overlapping with your previous self. Like, you're going forward in time now. Instantly, I'm going backwards. Now there's two of me overlapping. Then I turned into, like, a teleportation accident, blob person or whatever. So either they have teleportation too, or I don't understand how these turnstile things work. I'm gonna go with they have teleportation and just never mention it. When you invert and travel back through time, you have to bring inverted oxygen with you because normal forward oxygen doesn't work. You can't breathe it. So here's a question. Wouldn't you be deaf? Because if you're going backwards through time, then rather than sound coming from a source to your ear and then getting turned into a signal and your brain interprets, now it would be a signal in your brain is sent out to your eardrums, which then turn into speakers. Basically, you become headphones?
What?
I'm pretty sure you would be deaf. Also, if you're going through time backwards, then light's going the other direction, which means instead of light going into your eye so you can see it, now it shoots out of your eyes. Your eyes glow? You're going to be blind. You're going to be deaf and blind, and you can't breathe the air or eat any of the food either. So you have to bring your own food too. This sounds great. This is a great plan.
When you run, the wind will be at your back. You encounter fire, ice will form on your clothes as the transfer of heat is reversed.
So fire makes you cold. Alright, so let me, if I have a cup of room temperature coffee that's gone stale, right? And then I start a little fire next to it, it would heat up everything around it, including this mug of coffee. And so the mug of coffee is warm, right? And then I pull it away. Now if you watch that in reverse, what happens is I have a hot mug, I set it next to a fire, and instead of being hotter, heat flows from the mug into the fire, cooling the mug, until the mug is down to room temperature, and then I unstart a fire, and now everything is back at room temperature. Nothing gets colder than room temp. Where is the ice coming from? I'm pretty sure this violates energy conservation. Also, this whole hot things cause ice, they completely forget about it for the rest of the movie when there's like explosions and they're shooting guns and other people shoot guns and explode and there's a fire on a plane. I don't see any more ice, so what the fuck? And if you want to say, hey, shut up, it's a movie, just forget about it. Then why did the movie make me start thinking about this with the goddamn oxygen thing and then the fire turning to ice thing? You're like planting in my head, like, hey, the physics is weird. And I'm like, oh, okay, wouldn't that do this? Wouldn't that do this? And then you go, no, it doesn't. And then it's like, they realized it would be bad. And they're like, oh, let's get rid of the fire and ice thing. But then it's too late, they just left it in, I guess. Shut up, watch Michael Caine eat the salad. It's more boom, explosion. Shut up and stop thinking. Fans have come up with theories that Neil is Max, the little kid, and that there's like way more time travel stuff going on. Like he has to go way back in time to be this age. Like how much time has he spent?
It's unknowable.
And the theory goes Max is short for Maximilian Neil. Get it? Whoa. Nolan has confirmed it's not true though. Isn't it great to have so much character development that the fans are digging this deep and making palindromes out of characters' names to convince themselves the movie is actually really clever with details you couldn't possibly notice unless a weirdo on the internet pointed it out to you?
Delicious. This is over. We're still standing, and you still care, and you can hear my life story, okay?
Perhaps coffee, water? No, I'll take an espresso. Take an espresso. Take an espresso.
He said espresso, get it? Because he's wrong. I've seen people online saying that this is character development. The fact that he doesn't know how to pronounce espresso correctly is one of the best insights we get into his backstory.
Oh, that's a toe smell.
You left it in the car, not the fire truck, right?
Why does he give in to the bad guy torturing the hot girl when he's doing it backwards through time? Like, how does this make sense? He's threatening to, in his own past, do something? What?
Listen to me. 3. I can help you.
What the hell is so great about this lady? He's risking the entire world, including her, because he likes this lady for reasons. She's not the perfect woman. I've met the perfect woman. She's 17. Just wait, it gets better. She's a 17-year-old lesbian with Tourette's that causes her to have facial tics. So her face, like, does this, like, shaky thing, right? If I could die and be reincarnated as anything I wanted, I wouldn't have the ambition to dream of asking to be a lesbian with a vibrating face. I mean, this lady's got a nice butt and all, but vibrating lesbian? Come on, man. They make zero attempt to look normal. They're just like running around all the time, driving backwards and all this. And so to everyone else, it looks super freaking weird and would draw all kinds of attention to them. But they don't care. I think it's because if they tried to do it backwards, then it wouldn't look cool to show it in reverse anymore. I think. So at the beginning of the movie, they go through this trouble of this test where they torture the shit out of the protagonist to make sure he would take the suicide pill rather than, like, talk. And he passes that test. And then multiple times risks the entire planet because he likes that butt. Let's play a game called Make Fun of IMDb Trivia. Kenneth Branagh revealed he read the screenplay for the film more times than anything he had ever worked on. He compared navigating through the script to doing the Times crossword puzzle every day. And this is a good thing. After being offered the lead role in the film, John David Washington read the screenplay in director Christopher Nolan's locked office. It took him 5 hours to finish reading it, because he kept flipping back and forth, quote, in pure amazement.
If I can't have you, no one else can.
Again, it's a good thing when it takes someone 5 hours to read your script. Although the movie is not meant to be scientifically accurate, it is based on actual physics. Before filming began, director Christopher Nolan asked physicist Kip Thorne, who he'd previously worked with on Interstellar, to read through the screenplay to help out with some of the concepts. There are a lot of times where they use science jargon and it's just jargon with no content, but the consequences were not at all explored in a way that made sense. So if you want to move backwards in time, you'd need to take air with you, but you'd also need to take everything else with you. The way you see an object or someone else, you have the light coming from the sun hitting that object and then coming back at you. See, I was right. You would be blind and deaf. I called it.
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
This is the first large-scale film since Stalker to be shot in Tallinn, Estonia. No, that's wrong. The first film shot in Tallinn after Stalker was Stalker again, because after shooting for a year, they fucked up the film stock and they had to shoot it again. They filmed that movie twice, and you still haven't seen it anyway. Fun fact, the part of the character Kat was reconceived specifically for the actress Elizabeth Debicki. So they rewrote the role for this actress. She then insists on auditioning for the role, despite them offering it to her. It was important to her to know that she could do what he was looking for, and according to the director, she came in and blew everyone away. She auditions to be, like, the part of hot white lady played by Elizabeth Debicki, and they're like, wow, you're so good at being you! What a way to go! Tenet is TIMECOP meets ENOUGH. Now we've covered the convoluted time travel. Let's add the domestic violence. Having never seen ENOUGH before, I thought it would be a fairly realistic take on domestic violence. She's trying to get away, but it's hard. There's money problems. He's manipulative. It might explore why women do stay in domestic abuse situations and for as long as they do. Why do they finally leave? What's the last straw? And then the real life problems they encounter in custody and things like that. Except no, it's just like Tenet in that it's a horribly unrealistic use of domestic violence that exists solely to manipulate the audience into feeling something when we finally get to that climactic final battle scene the entire movie exists just to prop up. J-Lo wants to leave her cheating, abusive husband. Okay, so she runs, but he's like a weird supervillain. He has a gun with a silencer, like he's a mob hitman. He tracks her down because she got a hotel room with a friend's credit card? Like he's that connected? He's got guys all over?
I know some guys in Detroit.
Like your guys in Seattle?
He sends, I think, fake or real FBI agents. I'm not sure if they're real. You spend about 75 minutes of her just like getting punched or running for her life and getting tracked down, and she's just like a Christopher Nolan pincushion woman. And then about 80 minutes in, she does a training montage and learns Krav Maga, as, you know, all domestic abused women do. Then instead of like self-defense, the climax is this convoluted plan where she breaks into his house, cuts the phone line, steals his guns, plants fake evidence to frame him, and then instead of just shooting him and then putting a gun in his hand and being like, oh, he was gonna shoot me, instead she pulls this let's fight man to man, no guns thing.
You want to fight me? Man to man?
Woman, Mitch.
Like she's the goddamn Predator from the movie Predator, who, by the way, was originally going to be portrayed by the Muscles from Brussels himself, Mr. $10,000 a week cocaine habit, Jean-Claude Van Damme. But he quit Predator because in the costume, he couldn't really do the splits or like his kickboxing. You do all this so that you can have the I am woman, hear me roar shit in the trailer, and then her plan goes horribly because while she like knows how to punch, he does too, and they're just like beating each other up.
Confused, Mitch. Aren't you a man? Huh? Can't you hit me again even once?
Eventually she knocks him out, and then she's gonna like finish him off while he's on the ground and like bash him over the head, but she can't go through with it. So like a little bitch, she calls her friend on the phone, confessing for the phone company to hear, while turning her back on the unconscious guy, and she's like, oh, I can't do it. So of course he gets up and then is like gonna kill her. Then she kills him finally. Also, the little girl's dialogue sounds like it was unusable, so they had to like dub it over with a 45-year-old voice actress. It's hilarious.
What's tainted? Is that like painted? Wow, this place really sparkles.
Tenet is about a woman who marries a supervillain who's connected to everything, including British intelligence. He has leverage over her thanks to a convoluted subplot where she's an art appraiser and then said like a fake painting was a real one or something, so he could like get her in trouble for art fraud, and that's why she stays. Also, she can't take the kid. He's gonna like keep it or something. It's
if I can't, nobody will. No one else can.
Anyway, in both cases, the women kill the guy, and then they both live happily ever after, having murdered someone, and are now single moms.
She achieved off-scale happiness.
Both movies are just horribly unrealistic takes on domestic violence used solely to manipulate the audience, and in no way relevant to any real abuse situation.
As arranged in our letters, I'm here to talk about Gracie.
What letters? There are no letters.
Sure there are. In the drawer where your pistol was, you just put your prints all over them.
Fuck you! I'm sorry.
Did you guys hear about the controversy in NASCAR? Yeah, it turns out this guy started driving his NASCAR backwards on the track, and that led to an automatic disqualification. But he appealed, and I'm no lawyer, but I think he's got a good case, which is that race car backwards is race car. The Sator Square. See, palindromes make it deep. By the way, this movie starts with a black American guy undercover as a Ukrainian. It's deep. See, incorporating palindromic names makes your movie deep. Just like that college sophomore story about a white guy from the burbs named Morpheus and his manic pixie dream girlfriend named Eurydice.
Ariadne?
That made it deep, right? It didn't make you roll your eyes so far back in your head you needed a Xanax. Get it? Because palindrome. Who names these drugs, by the way? Like Xanax? Where does that come from? What about this one? Ass effects? I mean, that one makes sense. What is this? Why not incorporate more palindromes? How about a subplot about murder for a jar of red rum? Instead, you just like used it to name things and it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? Was it a bat I saw? Could you imagine if Nolan had used nothing but palindromes for all of the dialogue in the entire film? I don't know, maybe he did. We just didn't notice. Hey, you guys want to read my new screenplay? It's called Tulsa Nightlife, Filth Gin, a Slut. Here are some other palindrome titles for movies that you should write. Yo, Banana Boy. Cain, a motor erotomaniac was Eve. Said I as Eve saw Cain, a motor erotomaniac.
In a society driven to extremes, James Ballard has been seduced into a secret world.
The car crash is a liberation of sexual energy.
From the provocative bestseller by J.G. Ballard comes a film directed by David Cronenberg.
Campus motto, Bottoms up,
It's not
Mac.
a penis. It's a fist. Imagine you're riding up a steep hill, and you've already been working super hard, and you're sweating, and you're tired. What do you do when you're tired? You want to rest. You go to sit down, it pushes you right back up into your workout. The ass pounder 4000 will never let you rest.
Poo animals slam in a hoop. Boob. 7 Eves. Hey, wait a minute. Swap God for a janitor. Rot in a jar of dog paws.
Spend their lives in the dark, trying to hide from me.
Lag not, Eno. No gong. Get up. Put eggnog on 1-ton gal. I love this one because you can tell the guy who came up with it started with drenching a fat lady with eggnog, and then he just figured out how to make the first half sort of work with that, in that those are words, I guess. This is the best metaphor for Christopher Nolan's writing as I can come up with. He starts with a fat lady covered in eggnog and works backwards from there until it's sort of a movie.
The money plane has you covered. You want to bet on a dude fucking an alligator? Money plane.
Vader, I've reached the main power generators. The shield will be down in moments.
Take a shot. I'll cover for you. Set your harpoon. Follow me on the next pass. Coming around, rope leader. Steady, rope 2. Good shot, Jensen.
Work on the ball.
Sometimes I have difficulty talking to people who don't race sailboats.
What?
What's tainted? Is that like painted?
The white supremacist party has qualified for matching funds.
What?
There's obvious distinction between what happened, the past and the future, and there's obvious irreversibility of all phenomena. You would think, would most likely, and obviously it's interpretation in that some laws, some of the motion laws of the atoms are going one way, and yet we haven't found it yet. That is, in all the laws of physics that we've found so far, there doesn't seem to be any distinction of the past and the future. That the moving picture should work the same way going both ways, and the physicist who looks at it should not laugh. Details now to be explained. Here's this molecule moving this way and this one moving this way, and they come together, say, in the moving picture, and they bounce off this way. Now you run that section of the film backwards, and the physicist looks with his keen eye and measures everything and says, that's all right, that's according to the laws of physics. So if you watch too carefully, you can't understand it at all. Because every one of the collisions is absolutely reversible, and yet the molecules start in this condition. Blue, white, and blue, white, and so on, all mixed up. And as time goes on, through all the collisions, the blues separate from the whites. And they can't do that. But that's not natural. That if you start with a thing that's separated like this and just make irregular changes, it gets more uniform. But if you start with something that's uniform and make irregular changes, it doesn't get separated. It could get separated. It's not against the laws of physics that these things bounce around so that they separate. It's just unlikely. It never happened in a million years. And that's the answer.
End of play.